My name is Lillian Parker. I was 29 years old, and the moment my father called me selfish, I was standing beside a loading dock with a tablet in one hand and a payment confirmation in the other. I worked as a compliance analyst for a medical supply distributor in Tacoma, Washington, which meant I spent my days catching mistakes before they became disasters. That was the cruelest part. At work, I was paid to notice red flags. At home, I had been trained to ignore them. That afternoon, I had just approved the last transfer into what my family called the Household Support Fund, a nice little name for the account that swallowed nearly half my paycheck every month. Mortgage gaps, insurance premiums, car repairs, credit card minimums, emergency groceries, community college fees. Somehow, every crisis had my name written on the solution. Then my phone buzzed. A group message. "We think it's best if you take a step back for now." It came from my dad. Before I could even type, my mom reacted with a thumbs up. Then another message followed. "You've been making everything about money, Lillian. It feels selfish." I stared at the screen until the words stopped looking real. Selfish. After 7 years of paying bills I didn't create, covering mistakes I didn't make, and smiling while everyone else called it family loyalty, they had decided I was the problem. My fingers moved before my fear could stop them. Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fund too. I hit send. Then I opened the banking app, canceled every automatic transfer, removed myself from every shared payment, and walked away. No money, no support, no mercy. Before I tell you what he said next, and what happened after I walked out, tell me, what time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The first call came 6 minutes later. I didn't answer. The second came before I even got back to my desk. By the time I sat down in my cubicle, my phone had lit up 12 times, and each vibration felt like someone knocking on a door I had finally locked. I turned the screen face down and opened the spreadsheet I was supposed to review, but the numbers blurred. For years, I had been the emergency button they pressed whenever reality got inconvenient. Now they were discovering that emergency buttons don't work after you insult the person who installed them. At 4:17 p.m., my dad texted, "Don't be dramatic." At 4:22, my mom wrote, "Nobody said forever." At 4:31, my sister sent, "Can you at least wait until after my tuition payment clears?" That message told me everything. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I'm sorry." Just, "Can you keep paying until it stops affecting me?" I closed my eyes and remembered the first time I had agreed to help. I was 22, fresh out of a certification program, making barely enough to cover rent. My dad said the mortgage was short. Just this once. My mom promised it would never become a habit. My sister cried because she needed a laptop for school. I skipped replacing my cracked windshield and sent the money. That was the beginning. Just this once became every month. Emergency became normal. Family helps family became Lillian handles it. By 5 o'clock, I had canceled the shared debit card linked to my account, revoked payment permissions for the power company, removed my name from the family phone plan, and froze the credit line my dad had been using for household needs. I did it carefully, legally, and cleanly. No shouting, no threats. Just boundaries in the form of confirmation emails. When I walked out of the building, the evening air felt cold against my face. My phone had 34 missed calls. I drove home without music, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. Part of me expected guilt to swallow me. Instead, something stranger happened. Silence. Not peace exactly, but space. For the first time in years, no one else's emergency was spending my money before I had even earned it. That night, I cooked dinner in my small apartment and actually sat down to eat it while it was still warm. Halfway through, my best friend Chris Donovan called. He was a paramedic, the kind of person who could hear trouble in one breath. "You finally did it, didn't you?" he asked. I gave a short laugh. "I think I just got kicked out of my own family budget." "No," he said. "You stopped funding people who were kicking you while holding out their hands." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't, because deep down, I knew he was right. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my dad. "You have until tomorrow morning to fix this. Don't make us regret trusting you." I stared at the message for a long time. Trusting me? They had not trusted me. They had used me. Then called me selfish when I finally noticed. I typed one sentence back. "I already fixed my part." Then I turned my phone off. The next morning, I woke up to 89 missed calls, 14 voicemails, and a bank alert showing that one of their payments had failed at 6:03 a.m. That was the first crack. By noon, the cracks became a collapse. The first real consequence came through a voicemail from my father, and even before I played it, I could tell from the length that panic had replaced pride. It was 3 minutes and 18 seconds long. He started with anger, moved into accusation, and ended with something close to begging. "The truck payment bounced, Lillian. I need you to put the transfer back before they charge another fee. Your mother's prescription card didn't process either. And Madison School says the installment plan was tied to your account. You can't just pull everything without warning." Without warning. That phrase almost made me laugh. I had warned them for years, just not with those exact words. I warned them every time I said I was tired. Every time I said I needed to save for my own future. Every time I said I could not keep carrying 3 adults and 1 teenager's dreams on one paycheck. They heard the sound of my voice, but not the meaning. By Wednesday, the family group chat had changed from cold dismissal to controlled chaos. My mom sent a photo of a late notice like it was evidence in a trial. My dad wrote, "This is financial sabotage." Madison wrote, "I can't believe you're doing this to me." I almost replied, "No, you can't believe I stopped letting you do it to me." But I did not. I was learning that not every truth needed to be delivered immediately. Sometimes the strongest answer is a closed wallet and a quiet phone. At work, I forced myself into routine. I reviewed vendor contracts, checked compliance documents, and investigated a shipment discrepancy involving surgical gloves. It should have felt boring, but it became an anchor. Every clean report reminded me that my life could have order. Every finished task reminded me that I was capable of building something that did not revolve around rescuing people who resented being rescued. But the guilt still came in waves. It hit me hardest when I passed the pharmacy near my apartment and wondered whether my mom had found another way to pay. It hit me when I saw a college student with a backpack and thought of Madison. It hit me at midnight when I almost turned my phone back on just to make sure no one had fallen apart completely. Then I remembered the thumbs up. My dad had pushed me out. My mom had approved it. My sister had only asked about tuition. They had voted me out of the family when they thought I would still pay the bill from outside the room. On Friday, Chris came over with takeout and found me sitting on the floor, surrounded by old bank statements. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Counting." "Counting what?" I held up a folder. "Everything." We spread the papers across my coffee table. Mortgage transfers, insurance deductibles, credit card payments, utility bills, school fees, car repairs, holiday expenses, grocery orders, emergency loans that were never repaid. The total made Chris sit back silently. $148,000 over 7 years. And that did not include the birthdays I skipped, the vacations I never took, the retirement contributions I never made, or the apartment I could have bought if I had not been so busy keeping my parents comfortable. "Lillian," Chris said quietly, "this isn't helping. This is extraction." I looked at the number until my eyes burned. Extraction. That was the word. They had not leaned on me during a hard season. They had built a lifestyle with my spine as the foundation. The next morning, I called my bank and asked for a full review of every recurring authorization linked to my accounts. The woman on the phone was kind, but I could hear the surprise in her voice as she listed them: family mobile plan, storage unit, dental financing, insurance installment, home repair loan, streaming subscriptions, school portal, utility backup. It sounded ridiculous when spoken out loud. It sounded like I had been financing a household I did not even live in. One by one, I removed my name. By the end of the call, I had a confirmation number and a strange feeling in my chest, like grief and relief had shaken hands. That afternoon, Madison texted me privately. "Dad says you're ruining everything because you're jealous that I still live at home." I stared at that sentence and felt the last soft place in me harden. Jealous. She thought I envied her dependence. She did not understand that I had been buying her comfort with my independence. I typed, deleted, typed again, then finally sent. "I'm not jealous of a life I paid for. I hope you learn what things cost." She did not respond. 2 days later, my parents' second car disappeared from their driveway. I found out from a neighbor I still spoke to, Mrs. Alvarez, who called me because she was worried. "Your father was shouting at a tow truck driver," she said. "I thought you should know." I thanked her, hung up, and sat very still. Part of me hurt. Another part of me knew the truth. That truck had been more important to my father than apologizing, and now even the truck was gone. A week after I canceled the fund, my dad sent a message that looked polite enough to fool anyone who did not know him. "We need to talk as a family. Come by Saturday at 6. Not, "Please." Not, "Can we?" A command wearing a button-down shirt. I almost ignored it, but Chris said something that stayed with me. "You don't have to go to rescue them, but maybe you should go to witness what your absence revealed." So on Saturday, I drove to the house where I had grown up, parked at the curb instead of the driveway, and sat in my car for a full minute before going in. The porch light flickered. The flower beds were overgrown. There was a stack of unopened mail visible through the front window. That house had always looked stable from the outside, the way my family had always looked loving from a distance. Up close, both were falling apart. My mother opened the door before I knocked. Her face looked thinner, and for one painful second I almost stepped into my old role. I almost said, "What do you need?" Instead I said, "I'm here to talk." She looked disappointed that I did not sound worried enough. Inside, my father sat at the dining table with papers arranged in neat piles, as if neatness could turn unpaid bills into a plan. Madison sat on the couch with swollen eyes and her arms crossed. No one hugged me. No one apologized. My dad pointed to the chair across from him. "Sit down." I stayed standing. "Say what you need to say." His jaw tightened. "This attitude is exactly the problem." My mom whispered, "Lillian, please. We're exhausted." "So was I said. The room went quiet. My dad tapped the papers. "You cut off payments that affect this household. You embarrassed us. The truck is gone. The card is frozen. Madison's school account is delinquent. Your mother had to ask the pharmacy to split a prescription. Do you understand what you've done?" I looked at each of them. Yes. I stopped paying for things that were never my responsibility. Madison shot up from the couch. "My school is not things. That's my future." "Then treat it like your future," I said. "Apply for aid. Get a part-time job. Talk to the counselor. Make a payment plan under your own name. I worked through my program. You can work through yours." Her face twisted. "You always act like you suffered more than everyone." That one landed. Not because it was true, but because it proved how little she had seen me. I turned to my parents. "Did you tell her I paid her enrollment deposit? Her books? Her laptop? Her car insurance? Did you tell her I postponed my own certification exam twice because you needed money for her fees? My mom looked down. My dad did not. We didn't ask you to keep score, he said. No, I replied. You asked me to pay the score and pretend there wasn't one. My voice shook, but I did not stop. I paid the mortgage when you refinanced without telling me. I covered the credit card after Christmas because you wanted Madison to have one normal holiday. I paid for the water heater. I paid for Mom's dental work. I paid the overdraft fees you blamed on bank errors. I gave up vacations, savings, dates, sleep, and peace. And after all of that, you sent a group text telling me to take a step back. Then you called me selfish. My dad stood. Because you made us feel small. No, I said. The truth made you feel small. I just stopped hiding it. My mom finally started crying, but even her tears felt complicated. Were they for me or for the money? I could not tell anymore. She reached toward me. We were wrong to send that message like that. Like that. Not wrong to use me. Not wrong to shame me. Wrong in presentation, not principle. I took one step back. You still don't understand. My father slammed his palm on the table. What do you want from us? A medal? You helped your family. That's what family does. No, I said. Family does not drain one person dry and then call her selfish for bleeding. Madison started crying harder. So you're just done with us? I looked at her, and for the first time, I did not see a helpless little sister. I saw a young woman who had been taught that love arrived through my bank account. I'm done being the fund. I'm done being the backup plan. I'm done being punished for being capable. My father laughed bitterly. And what happens to us now? I picked up my purse. You become adults. I walked to the door while my mother called my name. I paused with my hand on the knob, not because I was changing my mind, but because I wanted them to hear me clearly. You wanted me to take a step back. This is what that looks like. Then I left. Behind me, I heard my dad say, "She'll come around." For the first time in my life, I smiled because I knew he was wrong. The fallout did not come all at once. It came in pieces, like a ceiling slowly cracking before it caves in. On Monday, my mother left a voicemail saying the utility company had refused another extension. On Tuesday, Madison texted that her counselor wanted to discuss emergency financial options, but she did not know where to start. On Wednesday, my father sent a photo of a letter from the credit union with only 3 words. Are you happy? I was not happy. That was what people like him never understood. Boundaries do not always feel like victory. Sometimes they feel like standing outside in the cold while the house burns because you finally admitted you cannot keep running inside to save people who keep lighting matches. But I was not guilty enough to go back. That was new. I spent that week doing things that would have sounded small to anyone else. I opened a savings account that no one in my family knew about. I increased my retirement contribution. I booked a dental appointment I had postponed for 2 years. I bought a decent winter coat instead of telling myself I could make the old one last another season. Each decision felt like a quiet apology to the version of me who had been waiting patiently to matter. At work, my manager noticed I was staying late less often. You seem different, she said one afternoon as we reviewed audit reports. Good different. I almost told her everything, but instead I said, I stopped volunteering for problems that weren't mine. She laughed like it was a joke. I knew it was a life philosophy. Chris was careful with me during that time. He did not celebrate my family's struggle, and I loved him for that. He only reminded me when I forgot. You didn't create the consequences, he said one night while we walked along the waterfront. You removed the cushion. That sentence became my anchor. I had not taken food from their table. I had stopped being the invisible table leg. If the whole thing wobbled, maybe it was never stable. A few days later, Mrs. Alvarez called again. "I don't want to gossip," she began, which meant she absolutely had information. "Your parents had a loud argument in the driveway. Your father said he might have to sell the camper. Your mother said maybe they should have listened to you sooner." I thanked her and tried not to react. The camper. My dad loved that camper. He bought it 3 years earlier after telling me the family needed breathing room, then asked me to cover the registration and insurance because he had temporary cash flow issues. I remembered standing in my apartment kitchen, eating toast for dinner, while he sent photos from a lakeside trip I was too busy working overtime to join. Now the camper was on the chopping block, and I felt something close to justice. Not cruelty. Justice. The kind that says comfort built on someone else's sacrifice eventually sends the bill to the right address. Then came the message that changed the tone of everything. It was from Madison. I met with my counselor. She said I should apply for work study and emergency aid. Dad got mad and said that makes us look poor. Mom cried. I don't know what to do. For several minutes I stared at the screen. This was different. There was no demand, no insult, no, "you have to." Just confusion. Fear. A crack in the entitlement. I wanted to answer. I wanted to help. But I remembered the old pattern. One scared message, one soft response from me, and suddenly I would be back inside the machine. So I wrote carefully. You should follow the counselor's advice. Looking poor is not worse than being dependent and dishonest. I won't pay your bill, but I will help you make a list of questions to ask. She replied 20 minutes later. Really? One word. Small, but different. Yes, I wrote. Advice, not money. That became the new rule. Advice, not money. Support, not rescue. Love, not surrender. My parents hated it. My father sent, "So now you're playing therapist?" My mother sent, "She needs family, not paperwork." I answered neither. Madison, however, showed up differently. She sent me screenshots of financial aid forms. She asked how to write an email to the bursar's office. She admitted she did not know how much her phone bill cost because I had always paid it inside the family plan. That confession hurt more than I expected. Not because she was cruel, but because she had been kept ignorant by convenience. My parents had not only used me, they had taught her not to look at price tags because I was always standing between her and reality. A week later, Madison got a campus library job for 12 hours a week. She texted me a photo of her name badge. "It's not much," she wrote. I smiled for the first time that day. "It's yours," I replied. But while Madison was beginning to change, my father was getting worse. Pride, I learned, can survive almost anything except proof. And I had become proof that he was not the provider he claimed to be. The real explosion came on a Sunday evening. I was folding laundry when my phone rang from an unknown number. I usually ignored those, but something made me answer. "Lillian." It was my mother, calling from a neighbor's phone. Her voice was raw. "Your father took my phone. He said I was turning the girls against him." My stomach tightened. "Are you safe?" She hesitated too long. "He didn't hit me, but he's angry. The camper sold for less than he wanted, and the credit card company called again. He keeps saying this is your fault." I sat down slowly. For years, my family had presented my father's anger as authority. If he raised his voice, people moved faster. If he blamed someone, they apologized. If he made a reckless decision, we all rearranged ourselves around it. Without my money smoothing the edges, his anger had nowhere to hide. "Mom," I said carefully, "you need to call someone who can help you make a real plan. A financial counselor, a family therapist, a trusted relative. But I'm not sending money." She began crying. I didn't ask for money. I closed my eyes. Not yet. The silence that followed told me I was right. Then she whispered something I had waited years to hear and no longer knew how to receive. "I'm sorry." I did not answer immediately. The word was too small for the damage, but it was still the first honest thing she had offered. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. She cried harder. "For letting you become the parent in this family." That sentence broke something open in me. Not enough to go back. Enough to grieve. I told her I could send phone numbers for counseling services, debt management resources, and a community clinic that worked with medication costs. I told her she could use them or not. I told her I loved her, but love would not be wired through my bank anymore. She said she understood. I wanted to believe her. That night, Madison called me from her dorm parking lot. She had taken the bus there to meet with a financial aid officer the next morning. It was the first time she had handled something without our parents arranging it or me paying for it. "Dad says you destroyed the family," she said. "What do you think?" I asked. Her breathing shook. "I think maybe the family was already destroyed. You just stopped covering the cracks." I leaned against my kitchen counter and looked at the stack of folded towels in front of me. Such an ordinary thing, folding laundry while your sister finally grows up on the other end of the phone. "That's a hard thing to realize," I said. "Yeah." She paused. "I was awful to you." I did not rush to comfort her. Old Lillian would have. Old Lillian would have said, "No, you were just stressed." Or, "It's okay," because I had been trained to protect everyone from the weight of their own actions. New Lillian understood that sometimes guilt is a teacher. "You were," I said softly. Madison sniffed. "I thought money just happened because you were good at handling it. I didn't think about what it cost you." "That's why I stopped," I said, "because none of you were thinking about the cost." She apologized then. Not perfectly, not dramatically, but specifically. She apologized for the tuition message, for calling me jealous, for letting our parents frame me as cold when she knew I had always shown up. I accepted the apology, but I did not erase the consequences. "I'm glad you said that," I told her. "But I need you to understand something. I won't be your backup wallet again." "I know," she said. "I don't want that anymore." For the first time, I believed her. The next morning, my father sent a long email. The subject line was "Family Betrayal." I almost deleted it unread, but curiosity won. It was exactly what I expected. Blame dressed as heartbreak. He said I had humiliated him, abandoned my mother, endangered Madison's education, and turned financial issues into a personal attack. He said daughters should not punish their parents. He said one day I would regret choosing money over blood. I read it twice. Then I opened a new document and wrote down every claim he made. Beside each one, I wrote the truth. "I humiliated him" became, "He is embarrassed that his lifestyle was subsidized." "I abandoned Mom" became, "I gave her resources and refused to be used." "I endangered Madison's education" became, "I stopped paying for a plan I never agreed to own." "I chose money over blood" became, "I chose survival over manipulation." Then I replied with one paragraph. "Dad, I am not discussing this through blame. I will not resume payments. I will not accept insults as communication. If you want a relationship, it will require accountability, respect, and professional help for the financial situation you created. Until then, do not contact me unless you are ready to speak honestly." He responded within 5 minutes. "You sound like a stranger." I looked at the message and felt calm. "No," I whispered to my empty apartment. "I sound like myself." 3 months later, the family fund no longer existed. Not frozen, not paused. Gone. I closed the account after transferring the remaining balance into my personal savings, money that had come from my paycheck and was finally staying with me. The day I did it, I expected fireworks. Instead, I got a simple confirmation email and a quiet apartment. Sometimes freedom does not arrive with music. Sometimes it arrives as a PDF receipt. By then, the damage had settled into reality. My parents sold the camper. They downgraded the family phone plan. My dad picked up weekend contract work doing inventory for a hardware supplier, which he complained about constantly but continued because the bills no longer cared about his pride. My mom started meeting with a nonprofit financial counselor, and for the first time in years, she knew exactly how much they owed. Madison kept the library job, reduced her course load for one semester, and worked with her school instead of expecting me to solve it. None of it was glamorous. None of it was the kind of ending where everyone hugged in the kitchen and magically became better people. But it was real. And real was more valuable than pretty. My father resisted the longest. He did not apologize for months. He sent occasional messages through my mother, little tests disguised as updates. Your dad says the insurance is due. Your dad wants to know if you still have access to that low-interest card. Your dad thinks maybe you could help just this once for old times' sake. Each time, I answered the same way. I hope he finds a solution. At first, that sentence felt cruel. Then it began to feel honest. I had spent years confusing love with intervention. I thought if I could prevent every consequence, I was protecting my family. What I was really doing was protecting their dysfunction from exposure. Then, one Thursday evening, Madison asked to meet at a diner halfway between my apartment and campus. I arrived expecting another crisis. Instead, she slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a money order for $200. It's not even close to what I owe you, she said quickly. I know that. But it's the first payment. I made a list. It might take years. I looked at the money order, then at my sister. She looked nervous, thinner, older in the way people look older after they finally meet reality. Madison, I didn't ask you to repay everything. I know, she said. That's why I need to. I did not cry, but my throat tightened. This was not about the $200. It was about recognition. For years, they had treated my help like weather, something that simply happened around them. Now, for the first time, someone in my family was calling it what it was: labor, sacrifice, money, time, life. I accepted the envelope, not because I needed the money, but because she needed to become the kind of person who paid back what she could. We talked for 2 hours. Not as savior independent, not as responsible one and spoiled one, as sisters. She told me our mother had cried after the first counseling session because she realized they had never had a budget, only a belief that I would fix the difference. She told me our father had stopped saying my name at dinner because every time he did, Mom asked, "Are you ready to apologize yet?" I almost smiled at that. Almost. Then Madison said, "He's scared you don't need him anymore." I looked down at my coffee. I'm scared I never did. The truth sat between us, heavy but clean. A week later, my father finally called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. His voice was stiff, formal. Lillian. Dad. There was a long pause. I could hear a television in the background. Then my mother saying something too low to catch. Finally, he said, "I handled things badly." I waited. Old Lillian would have jumped in to make it easier. New Lillian let silence do its work. "I called you selfish because I was ashamed," he continued. "You were doing things I should have been doing. And when you stopped, I had to see it." My hand tightened around the phone. It was not the perfect apology. It did not undo the years. It did not return the money, the sleep, or the younger version of me who thought love meant never saying no. But it was the first time my father had admitted the problem without making me carry it. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine." "I know," he replied. "I don't expect money." That sentence mattered more than "I'm sorry." Because an apology without changed expectations is just another invoice. We agreed to meet for breakfast the following month. Public place. No financial conversations. No emergency requests. If he raised his voice, I would leave. If he blamed me, I would leave. If he asked for money, I would leave. He agreed. Whether he would keep his word, I did not know. But I knew I would keep mine. That night, I took out an old family photo from a box in my closet. I was 22 in the picture, standing behind everyone else with tired eyes and a bright smile, already carrying secrets no one had bothered to notice. My father had one arm around Madison. My mother was laughing. I was holding the camera remote in one hand, making sure everyone fit in the frame. That had always been my job, hadn't it? Making sure everyone else fit. I looked at that younger version of me and wished I could reach through the paper to tell her the truth. One day they will call you selfish. Let them. One day they will push you out. Walk. One day they will confuse your boundary for cruelty because they benefited from your silence. Do not explain yourself to people who only understand your value when the payment fails. I put the photo back in the box, but I did not throw it away. Healing did not require hatred, it required accuracy. My family had hurt me. I had loved them. Both were true. But love was no longer allowed to bankrupt me. The biggest lesson I learned was this: sometimes saying no is the most honest gift you can give a family. Not because you want them to suffer, but because you love them enough to stop feeding the weakness that is destroying them. Family should be a place where people share responsibility, not a place where one person disappears under everyone else's needs. Boundaries are not walls built from bitterness, they are doors with locks, and healthy people learn to knock. I did not walk away from everything because I had no mercy. I walked away because mercy without accountability becomes a cage. And when I finally stepped out of that cage, my family had to learn how to stand, and I finally learned how to breathe. So if you have ever been the responsible one, the backup plan, the quiet fixer, the person everyone calls only when something breaks, I want to ask you this: how long will you keep calling it love when it is costing you your life? Comment below if you have ever had to choose yourself, even when your family called you selfish. Because sometimes the day they say, "Take a step back," is the day you finally step into your own life.